we start in Indianapolis, where a change is coming at the quarterback position. Anthony Richardson has been benched by head coach Shane Steichen. Dan Graziano is with us now. Graz, what went into that decision?
Yeah, the Colts really got together this morning as a staff and decided that the best move for the team right now was to go with Joe Flacco, and that the best move for Anthony Richardson might be to take a little bit of a breather. They have long been of the opinion that he needs to play in order to improve, but they've reached the point where they feel like taking a little bit of a back seat might actually benefit him long term. They're not giving up on him as a prospect or as their potential future franchise quarterback, but right now, given how poorly he's played, how much he's struggled, and how sort of overwhelmed he has seemed, they felt like it was better to sit him down, go with Flacco, and see if Richardson can work on what he needs to work on in a backup role for a while.
What a way to start this Tuesday show. You just heard from Graz. You'll hear from him more later.
Yeah.
We've got Marcus Spears here, Hawk and Dan here for the hour as well, you guys. Dan, I'll start with you. Do you agree with the decision on Anthony Richardson?
There's a lot of nuance to this one.
Yeah.
To win, yes. And I think I'll give Shane Steichen credit. It's a tough decision. It really is, because it's fair to say that right now to win, it's best to have Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback. The questions that I have are two. Number one, what are you going to win? Is the goal to win 9, 10 games and get into the play? You're not going to beat, with Joe Flacco, Kansas City or Houston more than likely, or the Buffalo Bills. So what are we actually trying to go win? And then two, was this strictly because of the play? Did it have anything to do with the incident of this weekend when he taps himself out? And
said he was tired.
And that would be disappointing in my opinion. If they benched him because of that moment, I would sit there and say that's an overreaction. Graz, do you know anything about that? Is this more? I mean, this doesn't feel like a one moment.
Yeah, I asked directly, and yeah, no, it's more to do with overall performance than him sitting out one play. They felt like, that's been addressed. He didn't realize the impact it would have, the reaction it would have, and that's been dealt with. But character-wise, and in terms of him as a person, everyone in the organization really loves him and feels like he's a person of strong character. They're not worried about him being a lazy guy or somebody that doesn't want to play. So I think that's one incident, and I think it's more about having a 44% completion percentage than anything else at this point in the season.
I mean, I have a hard time believing that didn't go into it at all, to be honest, because even when you look at the film, he didn't have a great stat line, but he wasn't terrible. And that's just me being honest.
I thought the film this weekend was better than the box score.
Dan's going to show us that later in the show, by the way.
I completely agree with that. I think this is a maturity issue with him, and I don't mean like he's a bad person. Like, even just isolating that moment where he taps his head and comes out of the game. You just can't do that, right? That's a developmental thing that you have to make sure somebody pulls him to the side, a mentor, a teammate, a veteran, a coach, and says, hey, these guys have to feel like you are in this fully every single play, right. And that one thing they can never question is your effort or your willingness to be out there. And whether it's one isolated incident or not, it's a maturity thing. And even when you watch him play, there are moments in his game that he needs to take a next step for development off of the field, probably more than on it.
Boogie knows me. Me and Boogie been working together for a long time, since SEC Network. And she knows situations like this, I will absolutely eviscerate a player for doing something like this. And Dan, I 100% understand with what you're saying about reps and Anthony Richardson needing that time. But I lean more towards Hawk, and the reason why I'm kind of measured on how I look at this situation with Anthony Richardson, because I do believe he's overwhelmed. I do believe he's struggling mentally to consistently get ready to play quarterback every single week. He's also been through injuries. Y'all, that tap out was more than just being tired. Yeah. We act like Anthony Richardson ain't watched football for a long time. He ain't never seen a quarterback do that before. So for us to for us to just put it simply and squarely, to have that conversation about that, like we talked about yesterday, I don't think is the point. I think the point is, and I like what Shane Steichen is doing, is I believe the kid is overwhelmed and he's not playing well, not having a tremendous amount of success, and he potentially is scrambled right now. And sitting down and watching football and watching a veteran go about how to prepare for a week may be more beneficial than getting him better by being on the field and struggling and suffering and mentally kind of checking out of what's actually happening around him. It's a very hard position to play.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think because we talk about it every day, we make it seem like all of these guys are playing great. It's very hard to play quarterback, and it could be a mental strain on you.
Okay, here's the reality. The Colts' plan, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, this year was to win and have the young man develop at the same time. It's really hard to do in the NFL, but that was the plan. And after 7 or 8 weeks, a couple of them not being there because of injury, they realized they weren't happening. Or at least they weren't going to win at the rate that he was developing. So now their goal is to win and hope that he develops just differently than the original plan. That's the challenge.
So how do you develop him, though, if he's not on the field?
Well, it's hard to do. For a young man who's not played a ton of football ever since high school, it's going to be hard to do. I think they have to ask themselves, because you remember last week I came on this show and said, why is he not developing?
Right.
Because it's not happening at the pace you want. One, the injuries. That has hampered the development. Go back to last year and then this year. 2, he's not putting in the work. Or 3, he's never going to. And it's probably a little bit of the combination of number 1 and number 2. And to sit back and just watch Joe do it day to day to day might spark a different type of development.
Can we throw those numbers back up that you guys just had on the difference of snaps played between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson? I'll give you guys, our crew, some time. But as you see these pop up there, I mean, goodness, Joe Flacco has played 12,086 snaps in his NFL career. You see the difference between what Anthony Richardson, as a young career, has been able to do. How does this team look different? And are they a real contender with Flacco at quarterback here, Hawk?
To me, I think that's why the decision is made, because what you're getting from the guys outside of the quarterback. I know we sit here and talk about the quarterback every day, every show, but there are 21 other guys out there, right? Yeah. And they have to make sure they're going into games feeling like they have the opportunity to get out of there with a win, or like they're going to have an opportunity to maximize their time at their position. And so for these coaches, and to your point about the snaps, putting Joe Flacco in there probably gives a little bit of a lift.
Gives
to the
them a
rest of
chance
those
to
guys,
win the division.
because they understand
they're not going to beat anybody at the top.
They have a guy that's not overwhelmed, right? And to your point about the play, and to Marcus's point, which is a great point, that preparation into the week, feeling like you have all the answers to the test when you're in there, prevents you from saying, hey, I need a breather, give me one play
They're all
out.
in practice, too. They can see who's playing better there as well. Go ahead, Swag.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Flacco, obviously, like we have recency of Joe Flacco making a team better.
Yep.
It ain't like they just going to somebody that they haven't seen play football very, very recently, even within their own group, but also when he was in Cleveland and going to the playoffs. So it's not a hard decision from as far as play. And I agree with you, Dan. Anthony Richardson has some good plays. It's the inconsistency, though, as far as football play, that I think he's sitting down. And also, I think the mental part of it got to him.
Dan, the stats, as we just told you, not great. What does the film show?
Yeah, I was with Josh Freeman in 2013. The tape shows that the drops aren't strictly about the quarterback's performance. I think there's been a roller coaster by the quarterback, yes. But this past weekend is a little bit more about not getting much help. Okay, number 1, we're going to get a shot down the field crossing route. Ball's perfectly thrown. The pocket movement, that on Michael Pittman Jr. is on his face.
Wow.
Well, it's a drop. So listen, that's not an egregious drop, but it's a drop. If it's caught, it's a 20-yard completion. Ball down the field to A.D. Mitchell. This is a go route. Ball is absolutely perfectly thrown. It's a drop. I would love to see A.D. Mitchell make that catch. That's 35, 40 yards and a touchdown. Anthony Richardson drop back the pass, navigates the pocket again. We're going to take a shot down the field to A.D. Mitchell. That ball's perfectly thrown, but he doesn't get 2 feet in, so it's an incomplete pass. Ball fake in the pocket, absolute chaos. Climbs the pocket, throws this crossing route. Not perfect, but it's right in his hands, but dropped. Guys, that's 130 yards and 2 touchdowns dropped right there. Anthony Richardson drops back in the pocket. He takes his shot up the field. A.D. Mitchell. 2 inches too far, but that's not this unbelievably, oh my gosh, this guy is so inaccurate type of throw. 2 more. Anthony Richardson, ball fake. Ball down the rail. Michael Pittman Jr., go make that contested catch. Or is that Alec Pierce? Go make that contested catch. He doesn't. But these aren't unbelievably egregious missed throws. The next play actually is a touchdown to Dodson that he drops. I think what the box score said about Anthony Richardson's performance this week was this guy's the most inaccurate quarterback in football. But the tape says it was a little bit of not getting much help by the supporting cast.
Yeah, and I guess that's the source, because I saw the same thing you did on tape. Like, all those are incredible NFL throws. Those aren't just good NFL throws.
Right.
Right? And when you look at Anthony Richardson physically, he belongs. That's no question. He's not unmatched when he's out on the field, but it does sometimes feel like the game is happening to him versus him going out and affecting the game. And I don't know what the reason is those receivers and pass catchers didn't make those plays.
Because they're good players.
They're great players,
Yeah.
right? And I think for Anthony Richardson, this is not going to define his career. It shouldn't define his career if he approaches this like a reset and not like a failure. Because, again, as you watch, it's very similar to the conversation we had about Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, where it's like, hey, it's very clear that the game feels like it's a little overwhelming for you right now, and it's affecting other players on the team. We got to make sure that those guys continue with their effort levels and intensity levels while you sit back and maybe learn a little bit from Flacco.
I could be wrong, but the Richardson tape better than the Bryce Young tape.
Totally. And
Yes.
and another thing on that tape, again, everything's down the field. That's part of their offense, too. These are all throws down the field that are difficult and not necessarily high percentage throws.
Marcus, how do you sort of deal with this dilemma of you have a whole football team that has to do well and that wants to win and wants a chance to win, but yet you have to develop a young man who you drafted 4th overall?
Yeah, it's trying to weigh both. And from an organizational standpoint of knowing that your franchise quarterback who you drafted is your future, but also, like you said, Boogie, the responsibility to the other 52 guys on that roster to win, especially if you feel like you have a better option right now in the locker room. And to be honest with you, Joe Flacco is the one that makes this difficult because he's played so well in short periods of time and coming in behind quarterbacks. So it's not just as simple as continuing to watch your quarterback have these struggles and not have a guy behind him that you're sure about. They're sure Joe Flacco can make plays and make throws and actually win big football games, which is why I think this decision was made more than anything. I think it's more about how their confidence is in Joe Flacco and what they feel like Anthony Richardson needs, as opposed to the other way around of Joe Flacco just being an option because Anthony Richardson not playing well.